You're listening to the Cinemental Podcast.
Shall we begin?
Okay, welcome back to the Cinemental Podcast, where we discuss mental health in cinema and television and how it is portrayed. What do they get right, what do they get wrong, and what do you need to know about mental health? I'm Jeffrey Jones, and I'm a screenwriter as well as a professor of screenwriting, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother, a general and forensic psychiatrist, Dr. Joshua Jones.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, we want you to start your week off right with our podcast, so we drop a new episode every Monday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. You can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch us on YouTube or Patreon. Please know that all the proceeds from Patreon are donated to 988 call centers. Josh, speaking of 988 call centers.
Yeah, Jeff, 988 is the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. It's a number that you or someone you know can call or text if you're suicidal or in a mental health crisis. We're big fans.
Yeah.
And as always, folks, the information expressed in this podcast is for educational, informational purposes only. Nothing expressed in this podcast is medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. And, of course, tons and tons of spoilers in this podcast.
Spoilers galore. We should add entertainment, educational, informational, and entertainment purposes. Because we're entertaining.
Absolutely.
We're
super entertaining.
Yeah.
Hey, Jeff,
we entertain ourselves.
Yeah, we do, if nobody else.
All right, cool. Okay, so today we're talking about, this is a great one. Today we're talking about The Bear, a story about Carmy, the bear Berzado, as he tries to take over his brother's struggling restaurant after his brother dies and try and make it into a Michelin star restaurant. This is not to be confused with the 1989 movie about a bear cub evading hunters. It had the same name. Josh is not an animal psychiatrist, and it would be inappropriate to diagnose a mammal. Josh, what are we covering today?
Well, Jeff, today we're going to cover, of course, some diagnoses of the characters, but we're also going to talk about a concept that is illustrated throughout The Bear, but really in the episode The Seven Fishes that we're going to talk mainly about today. And this is the concept of the high emotional conflict family.
Okay, so like Josh said, today we are covering the Christmas episode Seven Fishes of The Bear. When we do television shows, it's really tough to do the whole gamut, the whole series. So we try and pick an episode that everybody knows and loves, and go through it as a way to illustrate, what we want to talk about in terms of mental health. So we chose the Seven Fishes episode from season 2. Josh, start us off with a diagnosis of the Berzado family.
Yeah, so of the 4 Berzados that we see in the Seven Fishes, Carmy, Michael, Donna, who's the mom, and Natalie. Let's start off with Natalie. Natalie doesn't have a psychiatric diagnosis that I can see, which is great. I mean, good for her, good for that character.
And Natalie's the pregnant sister that they rope into being the project manager.
Right. That they call sugar.
She added a cup of sugar instead of a cup of salt.
Yeah,
great.
And so Mikey, expertly played by John Bernthal in just this one episode, Mikey has alluded to throughout the whole series significant substance use disorder, probably leads in some way to his suicide. And then that's alluded to during this episode as well. Carmy, he's fabulous character, played expertly throughout the whole series. Emmy winner for why am I blanking on the actor's name?
Jeremy Allen White.
Jeremy Allen White, expertly played by Jeremy Allen White. He probably looks to me like he's got a social anxiety disorder. Okay. Throughout the whole series. Let me just take a moment to talk about Jeremy Allen White. I love this actor. I've seen him now in only 3 things. I've seen him in this. I've seen him in the first movie that we did for our podcast,
The Iron Claw, great episode, our first episode.
Yep, and then also for Shameless, and he's got resting, I'm surviving my family face.
Yeah, which makes sense because those are the three.
Exactly.
That's what he's done in every single show. Very much typecast.
Yeah.
Cool. You want to talk about the mom?
Oh, and then there's Donna, right? And Donna's a piece of work. Donna clearly has an alcohol use disorder. They don't give us a tremendous amount of other information for me to make a diagnosis there. She just definitely has some high emotional lability features that play into making the whole family a high emotional conflict family.
Okay.
But the number one thing for her is that alcohol use disorder.
Okay, interesting. Because here, like, I'm obviously not the doctor. I'm not the expert. When I watch this, I think that there must be something else going on, with especially the mom and Mikey, in terms of it being either depression or manic depression or bipolar. Is there hints of that, or is there just not enough here to give a diagnosis?
Yeah. Good point, Jeff. And a little of this plays into my own personal philosophy on diagnoses. That if I don't see I don't see it portrayed, I'm not going to make the diagnosis. Is there depression in both those characters? Absolutely. Is there anxiety in both those characters? Absolutely. Do the showrunners give me enough to make a firm diagnosis? They don't. And I don't want to go out and just kind of speculate, well, this person's got that and this person's got this, because I don't want our viewers or our listeners to, kind of look at that person and say, well, I look like that person, I've got this diagnosis. Something's going on with Donna. If I had to speculate, if you're going to force me to speculate about this fictional character, which is fine, maybe borderline personality disorder for her as well is playing into that. But again, we don't get enough individual pieces or symptoms to make firm diagnoses for these characters. So I truly think that the biggest issue, the biggest psychological concept that is really portrayed in this episode and by this family is the concept of the high emotional conflict family.
Okay. Then let's get into that. Define that for me. And what I don't want to hear is a family experiencing high conflict. Beat you to it. Little panic attacks of panic moments.
I've been practicing that all week. No, there's not a whole lot more to say actually than that. It's a family in which all families have conflict. Every family has conflict. If one says they don't, they're lying.
Right.
So it's a family in which conflict is resolved or not resolved with high emotional intensity, lability, it very much as portrayed expertly in this show. The four of them can't interact without there being some emotional conflict that is not dealt with in a healthy fashion.
Yeah. Okay, and so let's get into the episode a little bit, and we can talk about it in terms of the scenes. I love that first scene. It sets up everything you need to know. Natalie and Michael are talking. Carmy comes out. They give Carmy crap about not coming home or really having to convince him to come home.
This is why I didn't want to come home. This is why.
Oh, fuck you!
And they make a statement. Who's going to handle mom? So this is not new. They know they're going into battle. This is a family who, in some ways, is aware that they're a highly emotional, conflict family. But what is that? What can we do with that, other than just say like, hey, every family has conflict. My family has a high level. What are listeners at home supposed to take from that information, or perhaps apply to their own family dynamics?
Yeah, great question, Jeff. I think the first thing is to just identify it. And then, again, if it's a problem for you, or if you have members of the family who are suffering because of it, then it's something that you need to try to take a look at as a family. Or and this happens in many high emotional conflict families, they're not going to be able to do that. They don't have the problem-solving skills. They don't have the ability to be insightful. They don't have the... they just don't have the distress tolerance to be able to look at themselves. That's when, especially children of those high conflict families, when they become adults, need to look at, okay, what am I going to do with this? What has this engendered in me? And for many children in these high conflict families, that tends to be internalizing that I have somehow caused this, that if I speak up or I'm loud or even talk, I will become the focus of this conflict. So there's a high incidence of anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, and substance and alcohol use disorders in children in these high conflict families.
Yeah.
And this is portrayed really well in the Carmy character. I mean, he is mostly withdrawn. He's an expert. He is one of the best chefs in the world, but he's socially inept. He is socially anxious. He's got, admittedly, all sorts of routines and rituals to manage his anxiety around this, and this all stems from this high conflict family.
Yeah, and
it typically is the eldest child as Mikey, whose job it is to handle the parents of a high emotionally conflict family.
Yeah, and Jeremy Allen White also has his neck doesn't work. At least in every shot, he's always like talking at you, like from the side.
Wow.
And wins awards.
Yeah. But I guess when you got one of those faces, that's what you get to do. Okay. So all that is super interesting. I want to ask you more, but let's dive more into the episode. Carmy didn't want to come home. That was a big part of that episode. He really didn't want to come home. That's repeated a few times. So obviously, it's very important to the story. And that's just, avoidance of the conflict. That's just, I got away from this. I don't really want to come back to it. Correct?
Correct. Exactly right. Exactly right. Really well written. And if I remember correctly, in between the Christmas episode and then when he comes back to take over the beef at the beginning, did they allude that he didn't come back in between that time?
Correct. I think so.
So again,
I
mean, very, very fitting with the character and very fitting with this high emotional conflict family. I'll tell you, I tried watching the pilot when we decided to do this because I had not seen The Bear before we decided to do this. I thought it was, I'd heard of it, of course.
Sure.
I knew that it was a really popular comedy drama. I thought probably about Mike Ditka. Set in Chicago.
Oh, that would have been a much better. Instead of doing The Bear from 1989, doing Ditka would have been great.
So I started to watch it, and I tried watching the pilot, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to go through this. There's too much conflict. They're yelling at each other. It was brutal. Yeah. Actually, and so I skipped the first season and then watched the second season. And it's an amazing show. Yeah,
it's funny. I didn't love the pilot. I didn't mind the chaos. I just didn't think that there was enough story there, and I was really turned off by the gun at the end. And like they bring back the gun, I think another time, but like the gun isn't a big thing. But when he shoots the gun in the air, I'm like, I'm just this isn't that good. But man, do they find their footing. They find their footing right away. And the first season is kind of worth going back to. There's a lot of really good stuff in that first season. But anyway, that's besides the point. Carmy didn't want to come home, obviously avoiding the high conflict family. And so we start to move through the episode. Mom's in the kitchen. She's nuts. She's out of control. She's trying to do 18,000 different things. She's all over the place. And then she has what I, as a viewer, thought was her first kind of break. And it's where Carmy's been trying to help her. All these people have been trying to help her. And she all of a sudden just gets this idea in her mind that no one's listening to her.
Carmen, take out the prosciutto and the mortadella, please.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. Sprite.
Sprite?
Sprite.
Sprite. Fuck.
Why isn't somebody listening to me?
Well, I'm listening.
No. Why is no one listening to me?
Why?
And everybody else's attitude changes. Because I think they've seen this before. They've seen, like, when mom gets to this stage, we're in trouble. Like, we're in for it. Yeah, talk to me about that. Because that to me is where, like, this is different than just an alcoholic. Like, this is someone who's breaking. That's what it felt like.
Yeah, and most of the characters, even the ones who weren't part of the three siblings, also mentioned that this is going to go badly. Oh, this is going to get worse. Donna's going to erupt. This has played out many, many, many times. This is a pattern for her, probably fueled but not caused by the rampant alcohol use. I wouldn't use the term first break because I think it's too conflated with first break psychosis. But this is kind of her first emotional meltdown of the day, first of many, and they all know it's coming. This very predictable, high emotionally charged person, and then just the cognitive distortion that she has that no one's trying to help me when that's all anyone's trying to do.
Right.
Is very consistent for somebody with a alcohol use disorder, for somebody with a personality disorder, and a parent in these high conflict families.
Yeah, what personality disorders would be covered? Personality disorders would be covered under that.
Yeah, I mean, borderline personality disorder is the one that comes to mind the most, and I don't think we've done one. We haven't done an episode on borderline personality disorder yet. We should do Girl Interrupted at some point, and we will. But high emotional ability, person who clearly has not a very stable sense of self, lots of cognitive distortions, lots of perceiving things incorrectly or with a high emotional taint to them, and that's what you see. That's what you see here. And then you also start to see at this time Natalie's role as the middle child, as trying to be the peacemaker, not the handler, because that's the oldest sibling's job, but the peacemaker in the family. The writers also do a wonderful job of writing the characters to type based on their birth order, which is a real thing. I mean, the oldest child, the middle child, the youngest child, they have these characters pegged very nicely to those archetypes.
Yeah, and it's I thought it was really wonderful how every one of them handles the mom in their own way. Carmy's way of handling her was to leave. And Michael's way of handling her was to not. And he says that very specifically. At the beginning, he's like, stop trying to handle mom. The best way to handle mom is to not handle her. So he just lets her be. And he's, riding his own tough trail. But Natalie is insistent on, like, no, I have to solve this. I have to make this less stressful. I need everyone to be okay.
Okay. Oh my God.
Oh, Natalie.
And there's a piece of me that I will just ask you, is that a sign of codependence, or is that just a sign of a kid being in a, toxic stress family who's like, I don't want it to be this stressful?
Yeah, it's the child trying to manage the emotions of the parent, and of course we don't know enough about these characters to know what they were like as kids.
Right.
But in high stress situations like that, people will tend to regress back to behaviors that worked for them as kids.
Yeah.
To try to manage this. And so my assumption is that all three of these characters were doing the same thing. Because you said Carmy's way of handling it was to leave. And on a macro level, that's correct. But on the micro regressed level, when he can't get away,
right.
His coping mechanism is actually the opposite.
It's to try and help, try to help.
Try to do everything, try to do anything he can to not be a problem.
I'll just wait with you. I'll wait.
Why are you treating me like a child?
I'm not treating you like a child, Mom. I'm not.
Do we have a problem?
Yeah, and he's not trying to help emotionally like Natalie is. He's trying to help physically clear the path for his mom. Yeah, which is great. Meanwhile, Michael is like, just let the chaos be the chaos. Okay, this is getting into a screenwriting thing, and this is one of the things that I loved about this episode. This episode was really affected me as a writer, which is so funny because when people talk about the bear and the best episode, they talk about the next episode, which is when Richie goes to the super fancy restaurant and really finds his way and he finds his purpose. The Christmas episode to me is better from a writing standpoint, or at least for my own learning, because they do something here which is so hard to pull off, and it's the everyone talking over each other, because it's really hard to write. So when you're writing a screenplay, you write like dialogue, and you can occasionally do dual dialogue, but this is everybody's talking over each other. It's like a play. And you have to have really great actors and a really great director to be able to pull this off, because it has to be like, okay, this is what you want out of the scene. And I need you to do this over and over again because we have to get coverage. We have to, film it the same way so it cuts together. But there's almost no way that you can script that. But when you pull it off, it really looks like a genuine family. In a way that's it's hard to do. So so specifically in that scene where they're telling him about Claire, they're telling Carmy about Claire.
Dude, I don't have a love of my life. Just fucking tell Claire Bear. Claire Bear! Claire Bear, bro. We saw Claire Bear! That fucking genius down the street, she's beautiful. The body is banging! Yo, she is hot as balls. Hot as fucking balls. Oh.
Everyone's just talking over each other. And it's such a great scene where like you can't help but feel anxious, but it's really tough to do. The only other time I've seen it done well is in a show called This Is Us, where the parents were like yelling over each other and not listening but talking at the same time. It was just beautifully done. Anyway, this show that's one of the things that sets this show apart. Is their ability to do that, the trust that they have in their actors to make film rather than just make a television show.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. That's one of the things I didn't like about this episode.
Sure.
I don't like shows that make me feel more anxious.
Sure.
Feel anxious enough in my life and deal with other people's anxiety a lot. So when I have to watch things that make me anxious, I don't care for it. I mean, this was a masterful episode. I didn't like it nearly as much as I did like the next episode with Richie's
100%.
redemption arc.
And it has such a great redemption arc that should be everybody's favorite. This is my favorite because it's such a feat of storytelling. I neither you or I are really into anything anxiety, and it takes me back to when we watched, I think, Meet the Fockers back in the day, or really any Ben Stiller movie of that time.
Anxious comedy.
It's just anxiety comedy, and it's like anxiety comedy has never been my thing. Also, I think that Meet the Fockers was when you made fun of me for getting the concessions. Because I had said, I'm going to buy the concessions. You were like, I'll get our admissions and you get our concessions. Which I still don't get. Like, they're called concessions. What else should I call them?
Nothing. I mean, don't call them anything, because how else would I know that you're going to get popcorn and soda?
I see what you did there. Okay, so one of the next scenes, Carmy, who clearly idolizes his brother.
Yes.
Pitches the idea of the bear, pitches the idea of the restaurant that he is now trying to open, pitches the idea to Mikey, and it's very clear that Mikey is underwater. He says that it's a shithole, like, you don't want any part of this, like, just stay away. Mikey knows this is descending into madness. And there's a really nice moment where he kind of makes Carmy believe it might be a possibility. Carmy walks off and he slaps himself, and he starts to slap himself really hard.
I did it. All right.
And as somebody who has suffered from bipolarism,
No.
bipolar,
Disorder.
suffers from bipolar disorder.
Yeah.
The slapping made sense. The slapping really made sense to me. And I know that, again, it's not enough for you to make the diagnosis, but this screamed to me bipolar.
Yeah, it didn't to me. I think you could see that in also, drug and alcohol abuse, trying to sober oneself up, trying to hit oneself in the face, just the idea of shocking oneself into some clarity and alertness. So I don't think it fits with any particular mental condition. That whole scene, though, was very powerful, and one of the things that I wrote down as well, when Mikey just told Carmy, I do give a fuck. I give the biggest fuck. Was the line. Because you're right, Carmy just wants to be like his brother. Yeah. Mikey knows that it's a dead end, and he's trying to dissuade him. And look, as one who knows the pressure of having a younger brother idolize them in every single thing they do and want to be just like them, it is a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. Sure.
I'm just gonna let that one go. I'm gonna let that one slide. I'm gonna give you that's a gift from me to you on that one. Okay, so one of the next scenes, this is a tough one to talk about, but let's get into it. So mom's in the kitchen with Natalie, and she's losing her shit, and she talks about killing herself.
No one fucking lifts a finger to help me.
Look, I'm getting it right now.
You just can go upstairs and get Dad's gun out of my drawer, and I think I'm just gonna blow my fucking brains out, and then you guys can make dinner, because I don't think anyone would fucking miss me.
No,
yes, you can.
Mom,
You can finish dinner. You won't even miss me. You won't eat.
And obviously, like Natalie's thing, we talked about. She keeps asking her mom if she's okay. I got the feeling that that talking about killing herself was only something she would do with Natalie. You think I'm wrong on that?
I don't think you're wrong. And this is one of the most brutal things that a parent can talk about with a child.
Right.
It was very manipulative.
Right.
With
Which is why I think she would only do it to her. It was a way of hurting her.
Yeah, or manipulating her.
Right.
Yeah, the real trick in that is, of course, is that you've got to pay attention to that. You have to respond to it. And to put your child in that situation, even an adult child, is so brutally cruel.
Right.
If you're truly reaching out for help, I need help because I'm thinking of killing myself, that's one thing. Right. This, in a drunken rage, to use this pattern, and I agree with you, this is a pattern that had happened between the two of them over and over and over again. Donna needs to take a serious look at herself. She needs some serious help. This episode shows it.
So here's the thing, though, man. Like, not that the mom is beyond help. At some point, I think you just got to let people go. Like if people are so destructive, and they're actively trying to hurt you, I don't know. At some point, don't you just have to let them go, even if they are blood, even if it's family?
I think you have to draw significant boundaries and really strict boundaries. And this is a conversation that I've had with many a patient or a patient's family member.
Yeah.
Had it over and over and over again. Is that you can draw a boundary that's strict and firm and still love the person. You can say to them, and I've coached people in saying just this same thing. You can say to them, look, Mom, I love you. I love you more than anything. But I can't be dragged down by you in this.
Right.
I have to prepare myself. I have to be ready for when you're ready to take care of your stuff. And being dragged down by you in this isn't healthy for me. So I'm going to separate. When you're ready to take care of this, I'm here for you. But until
that's
that
great.
point, I'm not.
Boy, I'm going to put that one.
It's hard. But that's what I coach people to do. And that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. I'm gonna make that one of our YouTube shorts because that is some hot tent right there. That is I really think that, like, because I did that with Mom. I remember where, you know, Mom and I had a strained relationship. Mom and I had a strained relationship where I had to flee. I went to Reno for the summers because Mom and I just could not get along. And at some point I was like, Mom, I can't play the games anymore. Like, I want a relationship with you, but when you get passive aggressive, I'm just going to go. You know, and she stopped being passive aggressive, and we had a much better relationship. And you know, I was able to, and it sucks because in a way I was manipulating Mom. I was leveraging the fact that she wanted a relationship with me, but you know, setting boundaries is, I guess, a form of manipulation in that you're changing someone's behavior. But I don't think I was wrong to do it, and we certainly ended up in a good place.
Well, if your point is to change that person's behavior, you're right. It is a form of manipulation.
Right.
But if your point is, I've got to draw a boundary because I'm going to be ready to be there for you when you're ready to get help, and I have to preserve myself, I don't think that's manipulation, Jeff. I think that's just setting a good boundary and taking care of oneself. And that's okay.
Yeah, and I think it might be easy to start to think it might be manipulation or that you're doing something wrong, especially when, like, I mean, when you have to challenge your parent, when you inevitably have to challenge your parent, that's an incredibly hard thing for kids to do. But it's necessary because nobody's perfect and parents aren't perfect, and hopefully we're better than our parents because, you know, we saw their mistakes, and that's the natural progression.
Well, it's universal. It's a universal growth. It's part of growing from the child to the adult, and to see that your parents are flawed. And, you know, the Brazato kids saw that their mom was flawed very, very early. They'd known her for a very long time. But yeah, you're right. It's something we all have to go through.
Yeah. Okay, so then we get into, even though it's chaotic, I really enjoyed Mikey's war with Lee. So Lee interrupts Mikey's story. Lee, played by Bob Odenkirk. Mikey's telling a story. Lee comes in and ruins the story.
You have to find an ATM.
You sold the car, and then at the end, you find the horse.
You're like a real genuine fucking asshole.
Because I cut off the story that you've told a million times.
And you can just tell that, like, Lee and Mikey just hate each other. And this leads to the fork throwing incident in sort of the final 15 minutes.
Well, I guess we all knew that was going to happen, so it's out, and maybe everybody can relax. Huh?
You fucking piece of shit!
Which is incredibly tense. Incredibly tense. But yeah, Mikey. So and it made sense to me, given where we were in the story, given what just happened with Carmy, that Mikey was looking for somebody to go to war with. So when he slaps himself, that to me is like Mikey's now kind of descending into destructive Mikey. And so he sees his opportunity to be the most destructive by starting this war with Lee and throwing the fork at him. Because he's now different. He is a different character in the last half of the show. He's clearly suffering.
Well, they also allude, because I don't think they directly show it, but they also allude that he goes out and gets super, super fucking high. To cope
I
with.
didn't catch that.
Oh, no, because that's what Lee was. I mean, Lee was towards the end. Lee was really pressing him on that.
Yeah, like whatever you're on right now, whatever fog you're in.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Oh, I didn't catch that, but I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so they were going at it, and just two fabulous actors, two of my favorite actors going at it.
Yeah.
Two of the actors who only appear in this episode of this show.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great.
So then we get to I just want to briefly talk about the John Maloney character.
Please.
I don't even know the character's name. I just know it was played by John Maloney, and the guy might as well have been called John because it just felt like John Maloney. But I loved.
Steve. I think it's Steve.
There you go, Steve. I love how much. I'm just going to call him John. I love how much John delighted in the chaos, and you see it from the beginning where like the facts ask him for $500, and he's like, "I'm going to give you the money because I just want to be a part of this chaos, and I want you to update me weekly because this is going to be a shit show, and I'm here for it." And then he has a similar. He sort of delights in the misery of the guy who brings the eighth fish.
You're so fucked.
What's up, Steve?
Hey, Pete, thanks for bringing fish.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey.
And he's like, oh boy, oh, you're about to get it. And he's just smiling. He's just having a good time. And then he delivers a beautiful monologue.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's so well written because it does feel like a guy trying to find words as he's saying them, but yet they're so powerful. What a great character. I mean, John Maloney just lucked out getting such a rich, awesome character to play. Like I really enjoyed him in that episode.
Look, I don't know John Mulaney, obviously, but I mean, I've been a huge fan of his comedy for a long, long time, and love him on Saturday Night Live. Appreciate the things that he's said publicly about his own struggles.
Sure.
With substance use issues. And when he just showed up, I literally said out loud, "Why wouldn't John Mulaney be here?" He just made the whole thing. I wondered how much of his stuff was actually scripted and him just talking.
Yeah. I'm sure it was all scripted, but I get your point.
It was a fabulous addition. I completely agree.
Yeah, and again, just to give a shout out, the fact that continues to be in all the episodes.
Yeah, Neil Fack. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Neil. God, he just steals every scene. Every scene he's in, he just steals it. And I loved, and this is on purpose. He's comic relief up until Mikey starts throwing the forks. And then the first person Mikey asks to borrow the fork is Fack. And Fack is terrified. He's petrified because he knows where this is going. And to me, that was so brilliant because you take the comic relief and now he's scared and everybody watching knows to be scared. Like, oh crap, something's about to go down. Like if Fack is scared, we all need to be scared. And I thought that was really, really, really well done. I don't know if you want to mention anything about your love of Fack.
I mean, best character in the show, I think that's hard to say because, unfortunately in this episode we don't even get to talk about Ayo Edebiri because she's barely in it. She's in my mind the best actress in the whole series.
Or Tina. We don't get to talk about Tina.
Well, we don't get to talk about Tina, but
God, I started
watching the show, and with Sydney's character, if you told me that, hey, all these other people are actors trying to act around this one honest to God chef who's trying to make it, I go, yeah, that tracks. She's just so natural.
Yeah.
But you actually asked me about Neil Fack. Yeah, that character is just fantastic. I mean, he's the kind of the conscience of the whole show. He's definitely the heart of the whole show. He's the one that's emotionally real with Carmy. Great character. Must be fun to play.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think Ayo does a great job as well. I think Jeremy Allen White does a good job. The scenes though where they're like trying their recipes are so cringy to me because they're really good chefs. They wouldn't mess things up so bad that they have to spit them out, but they're constantly like, too much salt, and then they play that beat over and over again, and it's like, what the fuck are you guys cooking? It tastes that bad, like. And it's like it just could have been as easy as like, it's not perfect, it's not quite there. It didn't need to be any more than that. Like, these are great chefs, and they're making things that are inedible.
Sure.
That makes no sense.
Sure. Well, I mean, the strychnine and athletic sock dish is very difficult to get just right the first time.
Yeah, totally. Okay, last thing I want to mention about that episode, and then we'll talk a little bit about the rest of the season. Because I missed this the first time I saw it. In the final episode, Richie gives a chocolate-covered banana to Oliver Platt, and Oliver Platt is overwhelmed by it. I completely missed where that came from, and it's in this episode where Oliver Platt tells the story of the chocolate banana, and how the smells can just bring you back to a time, and how that moment meant so much to me. I totally missed it, but it's such a good plant for Richie's character arc later, that even back in the day, he was listening. He was paying attention. He is that waiter who can always keep his ear to the room and know what's going on. He actually is good at this because he has been paying attention the whole time. And it was, and they didn't rub your face into it. They don't even make that point, really. They just deliver Oliver Platt a banana, and Oliver Platt is overwhelmed, and we don't even get to see Richie experience Oliver's joy. It's just such good storytelling. And I could do 2 hours by myself just talking about how amazing the bear is, and I won't do that. But I loved that, and the fact that it was in this episode gives me a chance to talk about it. But I loved the whole banana, the whole arc of the chocolate banana was fantastic to me.
Yeah, the Richie arc, there's been a lot written about it, and I know that he's won awards for it as well. It's really phenomenal. And the next episode after the Seven Fishes, when he goes to the high-end restaurant and Staj is there, I watched that episode twice because it was just that good. And Jeff,
and Olivia Colman just comes out of nowhere
and brings it.
Yeah, she's so good.
It.
Yeah.
But Jeff, you and I have seen this phenomena happen as coaches, as athletes, as teachers, as professors, where someone with a lot of potential gets it. I mean,
right.
That's a real thing that happens. I mean, I've seen it in the medical profession quite a bit, where I've got a student or a resident working with me, and you can tell that they've got potential,
right?
But they don't get it.
Yeah.
And that episode was about Richie getting it, and they do it in a little bit of a dramatic way that I think some people who haven't seen this happen in real life would go, okay, well, that's not realistic. He's not going to turn the corner overnight and start wearing suits. Sometimes that happens.
It's also not overnight.
Sometimes that happens.
It's also not overnight, and that's what's so great about the show. In the first episode of the second season, he's lamenting the fact that he doesn't have a purpose. He wants a purpose. He's trying to find a purpose. He's trying to make this his purpose, and it hasn't hit yet. And then he has the conversation about respect, and about how service means so much, to that other guy in that episode. And so watching him get it is fantastic. And it's also motivated by his wife has moved on. The love of his life has moved on, and he needs to find something. And in that moment where you found out that your ex now is getting married, you can either descend into madness, or you can get yourself up and do something. And he decides to get up and do something, and I love it. And there's nothing more satisfying to me in this show, and there's nothing that makes me want to cry more in the show than when he shows up and he says, "I wear suits now," because it makes me feel good about myself. And I'm just like, God damn it, brother!
No,
Amen.
the way they did that, and the way they had him go and apologize to Natalie, and then of course, I'll admit, I've watched this scene now 3 times in the last 2 days. In the final episode where he takes over Expo from Sydney when everybody's crumbling.
Yeah.
And
Sydney has to go because Carmy's trapped in the freezer. He has to take over Expo.
And the way they do that, and the way they have a flat line sound right before the 5-minute clock starts, and then Pearl Jam's "Animal" comes on, which is one of my favorite songs.
Oh yeah,
and he just
that just hit me in my 13-year-old boy heart.
I've got chills. I mean, just the. Yeah, it was really a really good feel good moment. It's important.
Go ahead.
I do think it's important in that episode, and as we skip ahead to the final episode, I do think it's really important to talk about Carmy's breakdown there in the.
Let's do that, but let me make one last point about Richie, because again, this is just me geeking out about storytelling. I get what you're doing there. So last thing I want to say about Richie, and this is just more of a screenwriting thing again. There's a great scene earlier in the second season when he's talking to his daughter, and his daughter is telling him like, there's a new guy, and mom got a promotion, and it's all part of his arc of needing to step up. Mom's got a promotion, but you still need to pay child support because fair is fair. And he like reminds his kid like, I love you, right? And I want to take care of you. And he's being a good dad, and we do see that he is a good dad. And the scene is basically over, and they have one last line, which to me is what takes the show from being good to great.
All right, backpack attack. Here we go. I'm gonna watch you until you go inside, okay? I love you. And Eva, I love Taylor Swift too. I just needed a break,
And it's such a great line because, like, we get what just happened. They were just in the car. She wanted Taylor Swift for the 80th time, and he just was like, I need a tiny break. And it broke the kid. And it was such a great line, and it simultaneously shows, like, he's a parent, but he's a human. God, I love that stuff. I love that stuff in screenwriting.
Jeff, I have had that conversation with my adult daughter in the last 2 months. That exact same one.
Oh, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that at all. Yeah, your very adult daughter. Okay, so let's jump forward a little bit. The end of the season.
All right. So that last episode, by the way, is a phenomenal episode, and it brings everything together for the season, and they're going to succeed.
I knew we were going to descend into just talking about how much we love the bear, by the way, but I'm glad we're doing it because it's such a great show.
Well, I'm gonna bring it back around to a psychological concept here. So Carmy's melting down.
Like Dad making us eat our veggies.
So Carmy's melting down in the freezer or in the walk-in fridge, which, by the way, is a problem of his own making because he didn't take care of having the guy come and fix the latch.
Dating back to the first episode.
And he's descending into some madness.
Right.
He is thinking about evil Joel McHale telling him how terrible he was back in New York. And all these things are running through his head. And in that place, he is feeling like everything's a disaster. He's failed everybody the whole night through. When in reality, it's going great. Sure, they're having some problems. Yeah, but Super Richie comes in and saves the day.
Right.
And by the time he's having that meltdown, they've succeeded. Right. And I want to point out that this is a very common phenomenon for many of us who suffer from anxiety and depression. Where we will get feelings lies, and this isn't a technical term. This is what I call them, and that was the concept I use with my patients. Feelings lies.
Okay.
Feelings lie. They lie all the time. Feelings are our internal interpretation of stimulus that we're getting.
Okay.
But they lie all the time, especially if you have an anxious or depressive or mood disorder.
Yeah.
And so you will just misinterpret all these things that are coming in, and that's what he was doing. I'm failing, everything's failing. When in reality, if you look at the data, if you look at the facts, if you're able to check with somebody that you trust and really look at the data, he would see not failing.
Right.
They're succeeding.
So you're looking at the facts.
You look at the facts.
The Neil facts. Sorry, had to be done.
Wow. Wow.
If you're listening at home, there was a picture of Neil Fact that just flashed on the screen.
But my point is that feelings lie. They lie all the time. Not all your feelings. I'm not saying not every feeling you have is a lie. But feelings are just that. They're feelings. They're not facts.
Yeah.
So when you start to get down on yourself, and I've had to do this myself. I feel like I'm a failure quite a bit of the time, and it's a feelings lie, and that's when I have to. And I have developed this strategy over many years. Go to people that I trust, like you, like my wife, like my friends, and also routines that I've built up in my own head of, okay, let me look. What am I actually failing? Did I succeed in that? And that's what I encourage people to do.
This might be the same thing, but I get imposter syndrome a lot, especially as a professor. Like I when I was first hired, I was like, why did you hire me? Like, what were you thinking? And going into my first class, I was like, I'm not expert enough to be teaching these kids. And now I love it, and I don't have the feelings nearly as much as I did. But I get imposter syndrome a lot, where it's like, I don't think I'm good enough. And those are feelings, but it's not true. I'm
Right.
perfectly capable.
Imposter syndrome's a huge thing. I had the fortune over the last 8 years of my career to be in administration at a hospital, and I got to mentor and hire a lot of physicians.
Yeah.
And after a couple years, I started off my mentoring relationship and conversation with folks about putting a name to imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Because it's rife in the medical profession.
Was it Jeff
about
Jones?
it
Is that the name you decided on?
for who I was going to be?
No, you put a name to imposter syndrome. I was like,
No,
you're literally the
no.
definition of imposter syndrome, Jeff Jones.
No, Jeff, that's a feelings lie.
Looks like you're Jeff Jonesing over there.
Yeah, imposter syndrome's a real thing, and
Yeah.
and we all kind of I like to say it feels like you're getting out over your tips.
Yeah.
A skiing term. And again, when that imposter syndrome starts to creep up, that's when you got to do a fact check, do a data check. What does the data show?
Yeah.
Is your employer still paying you? Well, then you're probably doing fine at your job.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Okay, so let's bring it back around. So this is an episode, and we see high emotional conflict families.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the question that I wanted to ask at the beginning. I need a better sense of how to recognize this. Like give our viewers and listeners a better understanding of like how to know if you're in this, and what do you do?
It's a really good question. Defining a high emotionally conflict family is actually kind of tough.
Sure.
It's one where there's probably a lot of yelling. You probably have one or both parents who either have a anxiety or depressive disorder or a substance use disorder. It's kind of tough, and it's actually kind of difficult to research. There's a couple different ways to research who's in or what is a high conflict, high emotional conflict family. One way is very labor intensive, very expensive. It doesn't happen very often. That is, you have experts go out and observe the family over time and see if they meet some definition of high conflict family. That doesn't happen very often in studies because it is so labor intensive.
Yeah.
And then the other way to do it is to have people self-rate. And again, that gets into a lot of self-bias and normalization. So it's tough to define distinctly, but a high emotionally conflict family is one in which there's a lot of emotional conflict. I mean, I wish I could define it a little better than that.
Yeah.
But if you think you're in one, first of all, remember to normalize it a little bit. Every family has conflict. Every single one. So just because you have an argument with a family member doesn't mean that you are a high emotionally conflict family.
It's so funny you say that, though, because this is literally what I'm working through in therapy now, where like the normalizing that I do is the problem. And me trying to be like, it's fine, and my therapist is like, dude, it's not fine. It's not fine. And it's tough because I hear what you're saying, and I think that like what you're saying is accurate. And there's no perfect family, and you have to be an agent, of the family, where like you can't just be the police and make sure that everything is running okay. You can't have infinite boundaries that no one's ever allowed to cross. You just can't do that when you're living under the same roof with people. But man, if it's not fine, then no, don't normalize it. So that's, and I don't disagree with you. I don't know. It doesn't work for me as someone who probably normalizes things too much.
Sure. And if I'm speaking right to you, that's what I would say. But I also don't want, John Q listener out there to be like, oh my God, I had an argument with my mom. I should run to therapy right now. I mean, maybe, but the point is every family has arguments.
Yeah.
If your family feels like you're always arguing, that there's never peace, that there's always yelling, or God forbid, and this is one of the risks of a high conflict family, it moves past yelling into violence.
Right.
Then that is time to get intervention immediately.
Yeah. Yeah. I really want to discuss this more because I'm still not satisfied, but it's my own issue. But yeah, no, this has been great, and that's I think that's super helpful.
I want to say one more thing, because there's an episode in season 2 that also really spoke to me. We didn't talk about it yet, and it's the season where it's the episode where Marcus goes to Denmark to work with Will Poulter, who we find out also worked with Carmy. And Will Poulter has this moment where he talks to Marcus about figuring out that he's not the best.
Right.
And where and the illusion is that the person he's comparing himself to, who was the best, is actually Carmy. We find that out a little bit later. But Will Poulter talks about how he was really, really good. He wanted to be the best. He was trying his hardest. And then he started to work with the guy who was the best. And then he stopped trying to be the best.
Right.
And being open and not trying to be the best made him better than he was.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really key point, because I found that concept to be true as I was practicing my craft as a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no competition. You don't ever get to figure out who's the best psychiatrist, but being open to being humble and to knowing that you always have something to learn, especially as a youngster, makes all the difference. And I really appreciated that point that they made. And I thought Will Poulter's a fabulous actor. That bit part was phenomenal. And I just really wanted to call that out, because I think it's very, very important for all of us to be humble in whatever we do. And through that humility, we actually become better.
Yeah, it's funny, again, talking about this in therapy, but my therapist is talking about, the how freeing it is to accept that you're average, which I fucking hate. And, she's like, well, I'm an average psychologist. And I was like, well, then bye. I don't want to be with an average psychologist. But I get her point, and I think it's kind of, what you're saying of like, you cannot hold yourself to the standard of being number one, because it's impossible. You're probably not. And if everyone does that, you're going to be miserable. And it's like, why are you just going to choose to be miserable? Anyway, I got to go. I got to end this because I got to go pick up my kid. So I'm going to say thank you as always for watching or listening to Cinemental and our coverage of The Bear. If you like this video, please like and subscribe on YouTube, or you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts. We are a very young channel. We are growing, but your support at this point would mean the world to us. So please do like, subscribe, listen, all that stuff. For Josh Jones, I am Jeff Jones, and we will see you next week with an undecided movie or TV show. And we're going to rock and roll, and you're going to get a surprise. But since there's only 50 of you listening right now, then, I'm not too worried about your feelings. All right. Love you. Bye-bye.